Hi, this is Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. So, I've been trying to decide what would be a good subject for this video, and some of the conversations that we had on our last live show inspired me to talk about why we do shadow work and what the benefits of it are, and some other things that I've figured out from my own history and so forth. So, first off, I want to talk about the different parts of our development. I discovered when I went into therapy, into the incest survivors group in like 1986, that I had different parts of me that had developed at different rates. My spiritual development was always up there as far as it went from the time I was little, and it continued to evolve. My mental, intellectual development continued and was always up there, and that continued to evolve. You know, I learn new things. I'm willing to look at what I believe, make new associations, get rid of old ones if they no longer serve me or have changed. The information is new, and modify belief systems based upon new information and so forth. That part was fine. Obviously, my physical body continued to develop from the time I was a child to become a grown person. And however, my emotional psyche stopped about the age of 6. And I realized that it's that child emotional development. That's where we learn how to communicate with other people, how to understand when things are about us and when things are not about us. Because a lot of the things that happen in the world have nothing to do with us. They're just happening for other people and often are projected onto us. And the ability for me to acknowledge making mistakes was blocked by that lack of childhood development, emotional development. I was still interacting with people from the level of a 6-year-old child. And the 6-year-old, of course, thinks everything is about them, and anything that happens is their fault. So that kind of adds to the whole abuse victimology and stuff. And I think that that's something to look at, because you can do something about it. It's not like you're stuck. Your genetic composition is something you may be stuck with. That's like you're not going to change the color of your eyes by getting into magic, regardless of movies to the contrary. There are colored lenses, however, so you can have fun with that. But in order to be able to develop healthy relationships with other people, especially adult people, you need to deal with the child trauma to that emotional development part of your psyche and allow it to learn. I was fortunate in that I was living in a communal household, not a commune, but we had 7 bedrooms, and there were 10 of us living in the house at least one point. And we all paid, into the rent and rented the house. You couldn't afford to live in a house without roommates, so I guess there were more roommates. It had started off as a Finhorn garden or Finhorn community house, but shortly after I moved in, that part stopped because apparently children are not welcome in a Finhorn house, which is kind of like, oh, okay. Not very evolved if they can't deal with children, my opinion. But in any event, going into therapy and recognizing that was a huge, important step for me, and it's definitely part of the shadow work process. Personal self-development, mental health what's the word? Treatment is an important component, not just the magic, the ritual, and so forth that we've talked about. So, in order to succeed at that, you need to, it helps to get professional help. One of the things that became apparent during that part of my process was that the things that happen to you when you're really young, or things that are extremely traumatic that you haven't dealt with, are buried alive, is what they call it. So those emotions and those feelings are, when they start to be processed, are just as strong as they were the moment they happened to you. So there's not like, you can't ease into it. If you're going to do this, it's going to be messy, and it's good to have a support system that understands that it's going to be messy and will let you learn how to communicate what's happening to you and figure out better boundaries. Because that's the other thing. With the child emotional development stymied, at that age I wasn't permitted to have any kind of boundaries, emotional or physical, and that definitely affected how I was able to deal with people around me. And learning that, not looking back at yourself from your adult perspective, from your mental development, and and what you now know about everything, and taking that information and judging the child that something happened to, it's not a good thing. It's not fair to you or to your inner child. And nurturing and evolving and developing the inner child is one of the foundational things about magic. It's like, in order for it to work well, we want to get in touch with that part of ourselves, and to remember what it's like to wander off in the woods and sit on the grass or climb a tree and just watch the world, watch the insects, watch the birds, watch the clouds, and just be in it. So that's one of the things I wanted to touch on, because I don't think I've seen that in print anywhere. That doesn't mean it's not, and I've just not seen it, but it seems like it's a good thing to be aware of. So the point of shadow work, I was thinking about this, and some people are like, why should I go through that? What's the point? What am I gaining? Or am I gaining anything? Am I giving up something? Especially considering the fact that genuine shadow work is uncomfortable and will push your boundaries, your idea of what is real in some cases, and what is valid, and what's important, and the re-examination of belief systems and so forth. So I was thinking about it. Let's look at this from different perspectives or different points of view. So if you believe that this is your only life and there is no afterlife, and there's like nothing beyond what we get now, shadow work is still extremely important, because you want to get the most out of the life that you're in. And the things that are stuck in your subconscious and hiding around in the dark are the things that derail your success, your relationships, your awareness of things around you and what they truly are, your ability to make cognitive decisions and choices, your ability to function and have a free will, and make genuine choices instead of just going along with whatever people have told you to do. And that's part of the craft, in my opinion, is taking responsibility for your own spiritual development, your own development period, no matter what it is. If you're not in charge of it, who is? If someone else is in charge of it, do they have your best interest at heart? Do they even know who you are? I mean, and if you don't know who you are, then you can't share that with anyone else. You can't be in a truly intimate relationship with another individual on any level if you don't know who you are, because then you can't share that. So even if all of the things that I've seen and remembered and stuff like that and had happened to me turn out to be not real, it still makes sense to do shadow work. It allows you to become the most complete version of yourself and to choose what kind of a person, individual you want to be. People that say things, I just can't help myself, that's just the way I am, there's nothing I can do about that, they're lying to themselves, they're shirking their responsibility to become better people, to behave better, to acknowledge their failings as well as their strengths. And there's a lot in the being able to acknowledge what your weaknesses are and figure out what they are and then turn them into a strength. They don't have to remain a weakness. Leads to a more complete and integrated psyche. As long as we're looking outside of ourselves for justification and validation for being, we're always going to be vulnerable to the shyster, the cult leader, the slick salesman, the sociopath who loves those particular weaknesses and showers us with affection and so forth because we have this gap in us. And then we're more likely to be manipulated and not even note it. It'll just be so natural. You'll think this is your idea, you'll think you're falling in love, or you'll think that this person is the one, or you'll think that you have to have a soulmate in order to succeed. And that is part of the whole concept of shadow work. To choose. Actually choose. So, even without anything, being an agnostic, not believing in a life after death or a spirit realm, gods, goddesses, or any of that stuff, there's still huge benefits in doing the work. If you do believe in an afterlife, the question becomes, again, why do the work now? Well, let's say just the afterlife. We won't get into the reincarnation until the next part. So, you believe in an afterlife, what's the point of doing the shadow work? Because you're going to die and then you're going to go live in a nice place or a terrible place depending on your belief system. That's the reason for doing the shadow work. Because if what you get on the other side depends on what you believe in, then the things that are hiding in your unconscious, the stuff that someone told you when you were 3 or 4 years old about hell or heaven or some other mythology, afterlife, and what you're going to expect, is in there. Once you leave your body behind and become a spirit, the subconscious is just laid out there for everything and everyone, including yourself, to see. There's no hiding from your inner workings, underpinnings. And if they don't get exposed, looked at, and, I don't know, formed and shaped into a configuration that is more supportive of who you want to be, then you'll end up in an afterlife that who knows what it's going to be like. So the reason for doing shadow work, if you believe in an afterlife, seems clear to me. Because when you're in the body, this is the time and opportunity that you have to actually look at and evaluate and change what is important to you. And of course, that includes what kind of an afterlife you believe in, whether that is the kind of afterlife you want. I remember, I think I was around 12, somewhere in there, maybe 14. And I was thinking about the whole concept of heaven as I was taught in the Methodist Church. And how it was described to me as a kid as a place where, there was nothing to do because you'd already done everything and all you needed to do was praise God and sing his praises for all eternity. And I thought about what that would feel like, and I thought it sounded incredibly boring and sort of more like a personal hellscape because, and worse than death, actual death, like the cessation of experience and learning of all kinds and the inability to change and transform into something else. It's like there's nowhere to go with that. It's like the end of everything. I considered it anathema. I didn't like it. I did not like it at all. And I thought, I really don't want to go there. And I certainly wasn't interested in the opposite version with the hellscape thing. And, being tortured for all eternity didn't seem like a nice plan either. Definitely didn't seem like a good idea. And who the heck would want to go there? So it was interesting to have that thought process at that age and to consider what is going on here and why do I want to even participate in this. I think that was probably when I started pulling away from a lot of organized religion, although I probably went to church until I was 16, I think, maybe 17. Certainly didn't go there very often afterwards, except for funeral services, kind of thing. And the things that I liked about church, I was in the choir. I loved to sing. I have a good voice, had a good voice anyway. And music, I like sound. And of course with me, I liked to see the pretty sparkly things with wings that were flying around the church, which nobody else seemed to notice. And we're very sad all the time, the people. That part I didn't care for. So, the reasons for evaluating yourself. If you still don't believe in reincarnation but do believe in afterlife, it seems still a good idea to me. And let's say we go to the next step where you believe in reincarnation, that we come back, maybe over and over again. Of course, examining the concept of reincarnation is a whole thing in and of itself. Some people feel like they need to get off the wheel of incarnation and, because they don't like it here. And if they don't like it here, they don't want to come back here. So if they don't want to come back here, they have to become enlightened and not need to come back here, which means they need to do shadow work. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to let go of certain things that will pull them back. So, if you believe in reincarnation and don't want to come back, it's even more important to do the shadow work. Because then you're like, going to come back, whether you want to or not. Because there'll be something you haven't processed. When you die, all of a sudden, pop, you'll go like, I always wanted to do, and then now I can't. Or I needed to talk to, and now I can't. Or, I always wanted to try whatever. It could be anything. And then immediately your spirit will be drawn to returning to accomplish whatever that was. So again, there you go. You need to do your shadow work. If you believe in reincarnation and don't mind coming back, there's still no reason not to do the shadow work, because then you might have a better chance of coming back to a time and place more suitable for what you're trying to do, why you want to come back. And, for me, the world, natural world, is my version of heaven. Being in it is my version of heaven. Being able to experience it and be here, interact with people, share information and experiences. These are all good things in my opinion, and even though I had a horrific childhood, I am not opposed to coming back. I would like to come back to a better environment worldwide, but there's this idea, the idea of the enlightened ones leaving us behind means that we have nothing left here but people who are either trying to leave, so they're trying to avoid entanglements with others, otherwise they might be drawn back, or people who can't leave and keep coming back because they don't know who they are, and so we end up with a whole pile of unevolved beings that are sitting around going, why am I here? Why? I don't want to be here, but I'm stuck, and they don't know why they're here. It's like, I figure if the actual goal is for everyone to become enlightened and leave this plane, there's a pretty simple way of doing that. Everyone stop having children. 3 generations or so, there won't be any humans left. And therefore, by virtue of not having any bodies to get into, we will all be enlightened. Or at least not back in human form. I guess we could come back as animals, which would be more fun in some ways, because we don't have any questions when we're animals. But, But again, really important to do the shadow work. Because if we aren't making our own decisions and making our own choices, someone or something else is making them for us. And, I believe in not being too attached to the world in the sense of material goods to prove my worth to people. The things that are valuable to me are not things that can be bought to start with. The things that I find important are things like friendship, communication, love, helping people, helping the environment, being in the world. Nobody can put a price tag on watching the northern lights or watching the sunrise or sunset or walking into the woods and having a deer come up to you. There's no amount of money that can give you those experiences, because in order to have them, you have to become a part of the world you're in. And communicating with the universe, that's what it's about for me. Becoming a member of it. I know that doing the work is difficult, since I've done the work. It's not pleasant. And I remember many times feeling, well, first feeling like I was in a hole without a shovel, because I had no mentors, no people around me that were good examples of what I wanted to do or be. They all were doing things wrong, and I knew it, which is annoying knowing that. It doesn't help, but I did. I mean, I'd watch how people were acting, and I'm going like, that's not right. And there's something wrong with that. And, doing the shadow work allows you to have constructive confrontation. It doesn't have to be fighting. Teaches you how to stand up for yourself because you know who you are and what you're worth, that you're valuable. You don't have to put yourself last. It's not required to become a martyr in order to be enlightened, in my opinion. Although the way we have it set up in our societies and stuff like that, that seems to be one of the prerequisites for being any kind of a quote-unquote saint or enlightened person, is the willingness to sacrifice yourself for others. Not that I think that's wrong either, because as a mother, I was quite willing to sacrifice myself for my children and to protect them if I needed to, and still am. So Starhawk once said that magic is the ability to hold two seemingly opposite points of view in your mind at the same time without any perceived conflict between the opposites. And I think that's true. You can be both simultaneously, or neither simultaneously. It's a matter of attention, I think. I think that the words that we speak and the actions that we perform have consequences way beyond our life. I have apparently inspired people without knowing who they are, sometimes knowing them and inspiring them to choose a life path, which makes me nervous because I know I don't know everything, and I want everyone to find out who they are, not who I think they are or who they should be. But I believe that sowing seeds is a good thing if the person asks me a question, I will give them an answer. Whether anyone thinks they deserve an answer or not. Because the way I look at it, if someone asks the questions, why shouldn't I give them the answers if I have them? And then it's up to them to decide what to do with it. Whether or not they're going to do anything with it. And I think sometimes those seeds might sit nascent in their subconscious for who knows how long, and then one day suddenly pop up. I had an interesting encounter with my granddaughter this past week, where she was being followed by these creeps at Walmart. They were following her through the store. They actually parked right after she parked, followed her into the store, and then followed her all around the store, and then followed her out of the store. And apparently when she was about 12 or so, I'd given her a hint of how to make someone leave and go away and make them uncomfortable by staring at their third eye. I recommend you guys try this with each other. Just, don't tell your partner that you're going to do it. Ian used to do this to me when we went out to lunch, and it annoyed the living daylights out of me because I could always tell when he was doing it because my body would have this feeling, and then I would start yelling at him and telling him to stop because I didn't like it. And that's when I realized that that's what he was doing and that it worked. And so my granddaughter this past week used that technique because she remembered about that when she was 12, and apparently had used it several times since and confirmed its efficacy. And I was pretty tickled because I didn't remember telling her that. I had no idea that she knew it. I was telling it to her again. She's like, yeah, I remember you told me that when I was about 12 and it works. And I'm like, awesome. So you might tell somebody something and not remember you did, and 15, 20 years, 40 years, who knows, it might suddenly become a thing. And you might find out that something you said was important. So I believe wholeheartedly that the words that come out of our mouths have an impact on the world, part of being a co-creator of the universe, or whatever you want to call it. And so I try my best to give considered speech. You're also not in control of what happens after you speak, how someone's going to take it. And I can tell you from past experience, if they're not actually clear individuals, they're going to take it wrong. That seems to be a given, no matter what. They may later figure it out, but you're only responsible for your actions and your words, the things that you say out loud. Your thoughts, you might be able to do things about as you become more complete in yourself and so forth. But if you beat yourself up for a random thought you might have, you're never going to get anywhere. None of us ever are. And it's probably a good thing that telepathy is not universal. As someone who has had that happen to them, where they've been in the minds of everyone in the neighborhood where they live, I can tell you it's highly unpleasant, because the subconscious and the unconscious of most people's minds are not fun places to sit in or to eavesdrop on or whatever. It's annoying. So if you aren't a witch, there's still no reason not to do the shadow work. If you're not in the craft, there's still no reason not to do the shadow work, because basically what it is becoming a more complete person and more in control of who you are and more capable of becoming who you want to be. There was many times in the past that I did not like who I was. I did things I would never do now, but then I did because I was not clear and I was underdeveloped emotionally, or stymied emotionally. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know how to take things. Didn't know how to apologize. Didn't know how to take responsibility for my part in something. Felt that if I did, the world would come to an end. I thought I needed to be a martyr and be perfect. That was how I was going to keep the world together. It doesn't work, no matter how much we try. And being able to relax and accept the fact that I'm not perfect, that I make mistakes, that sometimes I'm wrong about things, but I'm willing to learn when I am. These are okay. Life is about learning, not about arriving or having arrived and never moving. I don't want to be the plastic flower in the store, even if it's very well crafted and made out of silk. I want to be the living, breathing flower in the field that bugs are going to run into and want to eat from, or things are going to step on and crush me underfoot, or I'm going to go to seed and bring up a new generation of flowers like myself. I'm going to experience the weather. It's going to be messy. It's going to be constant. And it's what I want. The ability to flow with what the universe is throwing in our direction, to be able to see the streams of energy and go with them to get to where we want to go, is part of the craft. But you can't do that if you aren't paying attention. And if you're not doing the work, you can't pay attention. You're not going to see those things. Not the same way as someone who has. So, hopefully this finds everybody working on themselves and not enjoying the process, but getting somewhere anyway. Because eventually I figured out how to make a shovel and dig myself up out of that hole, only to find myself in a tunnel that seemed to have no end. And I walked down that black, dark tunnel that seemed to have no end until I finally saw some light at the end of it, and knew that somehow I would get through, and I would come to the end of that tunnel and out into the sun. Now I'm in the sun. And I'm very glad I did all that, and that all that happened to me to make it possible for me to come out into the sunlight and be a part of the world instead of just being, I don't know what. Something floating on the wind with no will of their own. Of course, that could still be the flower, so that might be all right. But anyway, you know what I mean. Since we have will, we need to know how to use it. So I'm not just the flower, but I chose that field to plant myself in. That's what we'll say. So, I guess that's enough on the subject for now. That would be what I wanted to talk about, and I think I covered it all right. Don't be afraid to evaluate and reevaluate your most cherished belief systems, and look at them from other points of view, and then decide what works for you. But please, do the work on yourself, so you'll be a better participant in the life that you're in. So, this is Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. Blessed be.